Well, I think we'd think of kicking this session off. Good afternoon to you all. It's great to have you here around this celebration. So let me start by welcoming Commissioner Brunner, dear members, dear ambassadors, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Today we mark 4 decades since 5 European countries signed the Schengen Agreement and set out to create a Europe without internal borders. 40 years later, Schengen remains one of the European Union's most tangible achievements, which is a bold experiment in trust and unity. It created the largest passport-free area in the world, now covering 29 countries, 25 EU members, plus 4 associated countries, including Bulgaria and Romania, who fully joined the Schengen area on the 1st of January this year, 2025, marking the final step in a long process of integration for the 2 EU countries into the free travel zone. Every day, around 3.5 million people travel freely for work, study or tourism across Schengen without passport checks. This freedom has transformed everyday life in families, students and professionals. Schengen also powers our single market by accelerating trade and connectivity. The COVID pandemic has clearly shown that we critically need a Europe without barriers for supply chains and competitiveness. In short, the removal of border controls has reduced costs, increased jobs and boosted our collective prosperity. Security is equally important. By sharing a common external border and databases such as the Schengen Information System, the Visa Information System, and as of last Sunday, the Entry-Exit System, member states share situational awareness and strengthen police cooperation. As we go through challenging times, it is right, and I would say encouraging, to celebrate one of our most outstanding achievements. But let me remind you that this celebration of Schengen is not about the past. It should be about the future of our Union. And also, celebration is not self-complacency. The integrity of Schengen, its strength as a driving force of integration, the trust of our citizens in this outstanding achievement require commitment, require will, require trust among us. And as far as the Parliament is concerned, it also requires political impulse and monitoring. So I believe that we all can agree that this integration contributes to our prosperity and embodies EU's promise of unity in diversity. As chair of the Committee of Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs, I see Schengen as a living expression of the European project, a daily experience of a shared European citizenship. And then, following these remarks, I am glad to pass the floor on to Commissioner Magnus Brunner for his opening remarks, and also wish him well in his responsibility within the European Commission. We are working closely with him, and we do intend to continue to work closely with him. Commissioner Brunner, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I would also like to say thank you for our good cooperation we have with the whole LIBE committee, but with you personally also. Thank you for that, ladies and gentlemen. Minister from Luxembourg, welcome to the Parliament is a bit too much for me to say, of course, but welcome to you, to the Mayor, you can say that. Thank you.
Welcome to the Parliament.
Thank you. Also to the Mayor of Schengen, of course, or cousin as we call him, because they are cousins, the Minister and the Mayor are cousins, which I learned a couple of months ago when we had our celebration in Schengen, which was great, and it feels that we have done quite a lot of celebrations of the 40 years of Schengen. We went on a boat on the Moselle, which was really nice. Thank you again for that. We had celebrations in Vienna, in Brussels, almost everywhere in the European Union, in the Schengen area, which is good. And hello, of course, to our friend and colleague from Cyprus as well. I'm very glad that we are keeping actually these celebrations, these birthday anniversary celebrations going, because Schengen is I would say, a truly remarkable achievement. It's one of the biggest achievements we have in the European Union, of course, and there is a risk in a way that we can take it for granted if we don't make an effort to celebrate it. So each time we celebrate Schengen, 40 years of Schengen, I think is a good way of doing it. Because, as you mentioned, Chair, also it touches the life of a lot of people, of 450 million Europeans, or people living in the Schengen area in concrete ways by, as you mentioned, boosting tourism, for instance, making goods cheaper, also opening doors, be it in the work part, being for workers, being for studying also, but also sometimes in more intangible ways. When Schengen began 40 years ago, it marked a new area, I would say, of openness in Europe, a radical change in Europe's history of closed borders in a way. So opening up the borders, that was really something very remarkable. And I would actually bet that those who signed in 1985 would never have imagined that one day their signature would create an open road from the Atlantic to the Black Sea. So that is something which has been developed, of course, in the last years. And I would say there's actually no real surprise behind Schengen's success. It is down to a constant hard work and also improvements. Keeping Schengen going and growing is made actually possible by on the one hand, good police cooperation, continuous training, border authorities sharing the task of protecting each other's borders, and of course also the rules and the policies that we craft all together in the Parliament, in the Council, which allow all of that actually to happen. And we of course know, and of course we are aware of that fact that Schengen is not perfect. Of course not. It has to be developed all the time. That is not what we celebrate today. Not that it's perfect, but we are celebrating the fact that 40 years on, we are still growing and we are working to improve the situation. And altogether, I see in general 3 work streams for safeguarding Schengen and also for improving Schengen. The first work stream is to strengthen our external borders, protecting our external borders. And we, as you mentioned, with the Sunday's successful launch of the new entry-exit system, we are putting in place one of the most modern IT border management systems, a system for external border protection. We have registered, in the meantime, 250,000 people in the last 3 days, which is quite remarkable. So we know who comes into the European Union, who leaves the European Union, at what time and where. I think that's quite a remarkable step forward. We are also investing in more physical and digital infrastructure, particularly at sensitive parts of the border with hostile neighbors, which we unfortunately have, especially in the eastern part. And this includes new investments in drone surveillance. That is important. Frontex plays a very important role there, as well as also counter drone systems. And we are significantly also boosting the resources of Frontex altogether to assist EU countries operationally in the border management. The second work stream is to fix the problems we have, the challenges we have in the EU's migration management system. This means bringing our European house in order. That is important. That is something we really have to work on. And this Parliament actually agreed, of course, on the pact of migration and asylum last year, and we are pressing on with implementation. I think implementation is key and is a task where we have to deliver. And this Parliament and the Council, of course, as well, are also working on changes in complementing the pact. There were some missing pieces, like the return regulation, like the safe third country concept, like the safe country of origin part. And if we can deliver on all this, I think we will achieve a remarkable shift, actually, in migration policy, which will also benefit Schengen, of course. The third work stream, lastly, I would like to mention is on internal security. Whether we are talking about terrorism, about global criminal networks, also state-sponsored hybrid attacks, today's threats move actually across the Schengen borders and, in fact, across all borders, actually, which means we must have also cross-border responses as well. And our new security strategy, the Protect EU, is all about protecting the openness and also freedom that Schengen actually symbolizes by making, for instance, Europol more operational and also better able to support the national authorities by improving access to data for law enforcement and most of all, actually, by changing the mindset, changing our mindset to anticipate and also counter threats on a very early stage. That is important and necessary. So I would say Schengen is a success, definitely, and will continue to be successful because it is a shared project of all of us. And I'm sure you will have more ideas also this afternoon on how to develop Schengen in the panel discussions later also, and maybe also ideas later today what birthday presents, in a way, we can give to Schengen altogether. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Brunner, for your remarks. And in order to set the stage for today's discussions, now it's my pleasure to introduce you to a video message from the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, who could not be here with us today, but wished to share her thoughts on this 40th anniversary of Schengen. So let's listen to our keynote speaker, the President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola.
Commissioner Brunner, dear Magnus, Chair Zarzalejos, dear Javier, dear colleagues, distinguished guests. In this Parliament, we talk a lot about how we can make Europe work better for Europeans. At 40 years old, the Schengen area remains one of our greatest achievements. It is proof that when we are bold enough to put our shared ideals into action, Europe changes lives. Today, thanks to Schengen, Europeans can live and work in 29 countries. Schengen also plays a foundational role in our society, from the single market to tourism. Costs of a Europe without Schengen total up to 18 million euros a year. But above all, Schengen is a triumph of European cooperation and unity. That's why I'm grateful to you both, dear Magnus and Javier, for organizing today's event. This is the unifying spirit of Schengen in action, cooperating across national and institutional borders to reflect on how far we have come and to assess the path ahead. Today's discussions remind us that Schengen is not just a historic accomplishment, but a continuous commitment that we have a shared duty to protect and strengthen. And while we must not be blind to the mounting challenges of security and migration across our union, our primary focus must be to preserve and build on the progress that we have already made. This means working together with a constructive, pragmatic outlook to ensure that Schengen doesn't just survive, but fulfills its full potential. However, we must not stop there. We must look to the future with ambition and with hope. This is the European way, and this is why I'm so glad that Bulgaria and Romania have also finally been welcomed into the Schengen area, a step forward that this House had long been pushing for. In a continent once fragmented by borders, Schengen remains an enduring symbol of freedom, of opportunity and of unity. We must work not just to maintain it, but to move forward together with the same courage and conviction with which it was created. Thank you, and I wish you all a very successful event.
Well, thank you. Thanks to the President of the European Parliament for her message. And after this introduction, I think it's time to get ready for the panel discussion. Yeah, quite a very distinguished member of the panel. This first panel in this session has a quite, important title: Schengen for a Global Europe, a shared identity, a shared prosperity. That's quite a title, I would say. And it's important that we will have the contribution and the inputs of. We bid farewell to the Commissioner.
To move over because
you have to move. Yeah, but you're not leaving then.
No.
Oh, great. Thanks for remaining with us, Commissioner. And I would say that we will have the contribution of distinguished member in this panel. I guess that should be sitting around. Yeah. So I would ask member of the panel to come closer to us. I suppose that. So we will have the participation of Mr. Ken Leonards, President of the European Court of Justice, who will address us by video message. I have on my left side Mr. Antonio Vitorino, former European Commissioner for Justice and Home Affairs, 1999 to 2004. That's quite a period of time, quite an important period of time for what we are celebrating now. We have Mr. Nicolas Ioannidis, Deputy Minister of Migration and International Protection, the Republic of Cyprus, and Mrs. Lena Dupont, our colleague, Chair of the Schengen and Borders Scrutiny Working Group. So I will now give the floor to Mr. Leonards, as President of the European Court of Justice, who will address us through a video message. Mr. Leonards, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Today is a day of celebration as we come together to mark the 40th anniversary of the Schengen area. Who would have imagined 40 years ago that the name of a small idyllic town along the Moselle River, nestled at the crossroads of Germany, France, and Luxembourg, would come to embody a symbol of European identity and unity. Today, following a series of treaty reforms that have largely incorporated the Schengen acquis into EU law, Europeans may move freely and securely in an area without internal borders. It was this landmark step, the creation of an area without internal borders, that made it possible for European citizens to travel from Helsinki to Athens, from Warsaw to Lisbon, and from Bucharest to Tenerife, without having to pass through border checks. What once seemed unimaginable has now become a daily reality, shaping the way Europeans live, work, and connect across our continent. The disappearance of internal borders requires the adoption of EU measures regarding migration, visas, and asylum to secure the EU's external border, whilst welcoming third country nationals who flee persecution. The authors of the treaties aim to develop a common policy in these fields, grounded in the principles of solidarity and fair sharing of responsibility. Similarly, in an area without internal borders, the exercise of free movement should not undermine the powers of the member states and the effectiveness of the applicable national laws that operate on a territorial basis. As internal borders disappear in Europe, the long arm of the law should acquire a transnational dimension so that, for example, criminals are prevented from relying on free movement as a means of pursuing their activities with impunity. Accordingly, the authors of the EU treaties took the view that the free movement of persons should be accompanied by the free movement of judicial decisions. By virtue of the principle of mutual recognition, judicial decisions adopted in the member state of origin are to be recognized and enforced in the member state of enforcement, as if they were its own. Mutual trust, understood as the shared commitment of member states to uphold the values on which the EU is founded, is a cornerstone of the European Union as a whole, and of the Schengen area in particular. Ensuring a level playing field across the EU requires respect for the values of liberty, equality, democracy, the rule of law, and human rights. The Court of Justice of the European Union stands as the guardian of the rule of law within the EU legal order. In the Schengen area, this means that EU political institutions must act in keeping with the treaties, that the member states must honor their obligations under EU law, and that individuals, including third country nationals who enter the EU illegally, are to be treated with dignity. Let us take a closer look at these three aspects. First, EU institutions must adopt any EU measures implementing the Schengen acquis under the appropriate legal basis. The concept of legal basis gives concrete expression to the value of respect for the rule of law, since the EU can only act if it enjoys the legal powers to do so. That concept also protects the prerogatives of the member states by means of determining the applicable decision-making procedure and the required political majority. These requirements contribute to upholding the system of checks and balances established by the authors of the treaties. For example, in a case decided in 2024, the Court of Justice declared invalid a regulation that aimed to strengthen the security standards for identity cards issued by member states to their nationals, as well as for residence documents issued to Union citizens and their family members exercising free movement rights. The court held that the regulation was based on an incorrect legal basis. The EU legislature had relied on a treaty provision requiring qualified majority voting, whereas unanimity in the Council was required. Following the judgment, the EU legislature adopted a new regulation, this time relying on the correct legal basis. Second, the member states are required to play by the rules and cannot breach them unilaterally. Needless to say, if the member states are unhappy with the current state of secondary EU law, they must work together and change it in accordance with the treaties. For example, in a case decided in 2022, the Court of Justice was asked to interpret the Schengen Borders Code for the purposes of determining the lawfulness of border checks carried out by Austria at its border with Slovenia. The court held that, where there is a serious threat to its public policy or internal security, a member state may reintroduce border control at its borders with other member states, but without exceeding a maximum total duration of 6 months. It is only in the event of a new serious threat arising that it can be justified to apply such a measure afresh. In interpreting the Schengen Borders Code, the court observed that the EU legislature considered that a period of 6 months was sufficient for the member state concerned to adopt, where appropriate and in cooperation with other member states, measures enabling such a threat to be met while maintaining the principle of free movement after that 6-month period. Accordingly, the member state concerned could not unilaterally depart from that period of 6 months. After the court delivered its judgment, the EU legislature in 2024 reevaluated that political choice, amending the relevant provisions of the Schengen Borders Code in order to give more leeway to the member states. Similarly, the member states must also respect the rules of the game, even in times of crisis, as was the case during the refugee crisis and the health crisis brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. In a seminal case decided in 2023, the court held that the member state may, on public health grounds connected with combating the COVID-19 pandemic, prohibit the crossing of the internal borders of that member state in order to engage in non-essential travel from or to states in the Schengen area classified as high-risk zones, provided that those control measures do not have an effect equivalent to border checks, and that the reintroduction of those temporary controls complies with the Schengen Borders Code. Third and last, human dignity and respect for fundamental rights are key features of the Schengen area. In the EU, the human dignity of every man and woman deserves protection, regardless of whether he or she is young or old, rich or poor, European or foreign, friend or foe. It is a feature that defines the very identity of the EU as a common legal order. That is why, in a case decided in 2014, the Court of Justice ruled that national authorities are precluded from accepting as evidence the submission of tests that demonstrate an asylum seeker's homosexuality, such as intimate videos. That is also why the court ruled in a case decided in 2022 that in the event of a mass influx of foreigners, member states are precluded from ordering the detention of asylum seekers on the sole ground of his illegal entry into the territory of the European Union. Member states are also precluded from effectively depriving asylum seekers of the opportunity of access to the procedure in which applications for international protection are examined. Dear colleagues, dear friends, the Schengen area is a symbol of the European identity as an area of freedom, security and justice, founded on common values, where the value of human dignity is center stage. In the changing times in which we live, where authoritarian tendencies are on the rise, we Europeans must continue to promote and protect the Schengen acquis, which entitles Europeans to move freely, to live together, and to know one another better. It is this mutual exchange of ideas between free women and men which allows Europe to grow stronger. Thank you very much.
We thank Mr. Ken Lenaerts, President of the European Court of Justice, for his valuable remarks, reasserting the role of the Court as guardian of the rule of law in the European Union. And now I will give the floor to Mr. Antonio Vitorino, former European Commissioner for Justice and Home Affairs, and looking forward to his contribution. He will share with us his perspective on key moments of the Schengen project, which was consolidated during his mandate. And also we will draw from his extremely valuable experience and the perspective years after his mandate. So, Antonio, I have here in my notes that you have the floor for about 10 minutes. I'm not going to say that.
No,
Antonio, you have the floor.
Thank you.
You just have the floor.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this invitation. It's very special for me to be here today because, in fact, I had another life before being a Commissioner. I was the chairperson of this committee. Of the Libe committee in the 90s, and therefore I can evaluate how important has been Schengen, the pioneer role of Schengen being the first intergovernmental agreement to be translated and fully integrated into the European Union framework. And when I was the chair of the Libe, it was in the 90s, it was extremely difficult to have information or even to have a say on Schengen, I must say. It was something totally separated. But it was so evident that sooner or later the two things had to come together. Then I can say that I had the privilege of being the Commissioner for Justice and Home Affairs that, following the Amsterdam Treaty, was in charge of ventilating, that was the word, ventilating the Schengen acquis into the European Union framework, which means integrating an intergovernmental treaty into the legal framework of the European Union. And I think that Schengen made a shift in the paradigm. For the first time, the member states accepted that there could be someone in their territory that had not been specifically authorized to be in by them. But you can only build this if you have mutual trust and if you share the responsibility and the duties that come along. My personal feeling is that Schengen has played a key role in laying the ground for the sense of belonging to a joint project and to build a common destiny for Europeans. And it is not by chance that Schengen is probably the most cherished part of the European project to the youth today. Probably on equal foot with Erasmus. And if I have something to regret, is that not that often the European Union is credited for the benefits of Schengen free movement area and for the benefits of Erasmus. Having said that, both Chairman Zarzalejos and Commissioner Brunner have already mentioned that the first critical consequence of Schengen was to guarantee that there would be shared responsibility in the integrity of the external border of the European Union, and that could be no weak link in the chain, because if there was a weak link in the chain of external border controls, there would be an internal consequence of that, and the first victim would be free movement inside the European Union. And I must say that this project has been completed last Sunday with the entry and exit system. I'll tell you one anecdote. I had to negotiate, together with my late friend and colleague Fritz Bolkestein, the so-called and very famous PNR agreement with the United States, the passenger name record. And when we negotiated it, we required the Americans to accept reciprocity. Reciprocity between the duties of Europeans in the US and reciprocity in the duties of the Americans in Europe. And our American friends used to joke with us to say, but why are you asking reciprocity if you don't even have a system of entry and exit control? Okay, they were right. And we said, well, we don't have, but we will have in the future. Well, it took 20 years to get there. But I'm very pleased to say that last Sunday, at least, the rule of reciprocity that was kept in the agreement with the US came into reality last Sunday. And I'm pleased to say that 250,000 have already been registered. It's quite a step forward and the completion of the project. If I have to make a critical reference, I am a little bit concerned with the sequential events of re-establishment internal border controls that we are witnessing today. Re-establishing of internal border controls should be an exception only for specific reasons foreseen in the treaties. It should not become a rule. There are economic tolls when you re-establish internal border controls. There are reputational damages, and therefore I hope that the Member States and the Commission will keep an eye on the trend of using internal border controls to appease some reactions of the public opinion. Because I personally, maybe I'm wrong, but I personally have some doubts that internal border controls are critical for controlling irregular migration. In my view, 60% of the irregular migrants present in the territory of the European Union do not enter irregularly in the European Union. They are the so-called overstayers. They stay beyond the period of time they are allowed to stay. And we have other tools, fortunately, to use to fight against irregular migration, like ordinary law enforcement actions, not at the borders, but in our own cities, which is happening. Secondly, improved labour market supervision, which is a hole in the system to fight illegal work. If you fight illegal work, you are more efficient in detecting irregular migrants. And last but not least, there is still room, in my view, to improve police cooperation and judicial cooperation in the fight against smugglers and traffickers worldwide. The second dimension I would like to focus, and I will keep to the 10 minutes, Chair. The second dimension is that the Schengen Agreement had a number of what we called at that time compensating measures. Of course, if you abolish internal border controls, you need to find compensation in terms of security, of internal security. And those compensating measures of Schengen have paved the way for the area of freedom, security and justice. Because in fact, those measures were above all focusing on migration and asylum, as Ken Leonard has mentioned, but also on police cooperation and judicial cooperation. And there we were entering an area areas that are at the core of national sovereignty. One day this story will be made, how we have evolved, how we have introduced the capacity to deal with these issues on the basis of European cooperation. But in fact, Amsterdam Treaty made the difference. Secondly, the Tampere milestone, the Tampere European Council, which today, 15th of October, was in 1999 the day where the Tampere European Council adopted the roadmap for the area of freedom, security and justice. And last but not least, of course, the Lisbon Treaty. But all this process depends, as I've just said, on mutual trust and shared responsibility. And that will be the test for the new pact. That will be the text for the pact on asylum and migration. The success of the pact is critical to keep free movement and also to fight against irregular migration. But that will depend on the mutual trust and the engagement, commitment and the shared responsibility of all member states. Two last remarks. First, on enlargement. From my own experience, and I had to negotiate the enlargement of 2004 to the 10 Central and Eastern European countries, Schengen was a top priority for the candidate countries. And rightly so. In the negotiations, we made an enormous effort, and I think that we have succeeded, in strengthening border police, border controls, and the capacity of the candidate countries to deal with Schengen rules, European Union rules, when it comes to border controls. I must recognize, but of course, if you quote me, I will deny, but I must recognize that we did not pay that much attention to the integrity of the police and the judiciary in the candidate countries. So if I had some remark to make for the future, is to say that when we are enlarging to the Western Balkans and further on, we need to focus not just on the border guards, on the border controls, but also on the functioning of the law enforcement systems, including the functioning of the judiciary. Even more, if we end up with a huge border with Russia and Belarus following the accession of Ukraine. And my concluding remark, I promise, is about the fact that Schengen was a source of inspiration. And sometimes we do not take too much attention on that. But if you look to Africa, for instance, the nearby continent, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is coupled with a protocol on free movement in Africa that is largely inspired by the European project. Unfortunately, up to now, only 5 African countries have subscribed to the free movement protocol. But I think that it is in the interest of the European Union to be very supportive to this African project. There are some positive elements. For instance, there is free movement in the ECOWAS, in the West Africa countries, with the exception of the 3 military countries now, Mali, Burkina, and Niger. There is free movement in East Africa, in the East African communities. And I strongly believe that it is our interest to support those examples of free movement in a neighboring country, because the future of Africa is run between economy and demography. If we do not support economy, we will have problems with demography. And if we believe in the forecast of the World Bank that says that until 2050, there will be 800 million young people in Africa coming to the workforce age. And the forecast is that in Africa, only 400 million jobs will be created until 2015. There is here a demographic problem, a demographic gap that might have impact in us Europeans. So it is our duty to prevent that such impact takes place and to support Africa in finding the right path to economic development, to find jobs for the ones who are born there and can be happy there, as we Europeans are happy here. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Antonio. And let me take this opportunity to pay tribute to you and to all those who pioneered this process that you have explained in such in detail. But also let me tell you, and this is a bit of a personal note, that I have also a previous life to the European Parliament. And at the time you were in the member of the Commission, and in my position in the Spanish government at that time, I could witness your commitment, your engagement, your solidarity in the fight against terrorism in my country, and not only in my country, and to provide the European Union with the legal tools for cooperation. I can tell you that we do not forget that, and we all Spaniards really thank you for that. It's very important you have been Commissioner, but I think it's been far more important you have been Libe Chair, and that's
no doubt.
That's quite encouraging. That's quite encouraging. Thanks, Antonio. Thanks. And now let me turn to Mr. Nicolas Ioannidis, Deputy Minister for Migration and International Protection of the Republic of Cyprus, the country that will take on the incoming presidency after the Danish presidency in the first semester of 2026. Thank you for being here, and we do look forward to hearing from you and your perspective on the Schengen agreement and and the meaning of Schengen for the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Javier, Commissioner, dear Magnus, Minister, Leon, members of the European Parliament, distinguished guests. It is a great pleasure to address this event today to celebrate the 40th anniversary of one of the most prominent European projects. The Schengen Agreement represents a strategic step towards the full integration of a European identity reflecting the values of freedom, security, and shared prosperity, the three fundamental pillars upon which the European Union is predicated. Since 2004, on the heels of its accession to the European Union, the Republic of Cyprus has been implementing a large part of the Schengen acquis. In May 2019, Cyprus submitted its declaration of readiness to join the Schengen area in order to achieve full integration into the system of free movement. Between 2019 and 2021, the European Commission conducted the required evaluations across 6 key areas: the protection of personal data, police cooperation, external borders, returns, visas, and the Schengen Information System, SIS. These evaluations led to a set of recommendations, followed by the preparation of action plans for their implementation. These included the upgrading of technological systems, the enhancement of database interoperability, the training of personnel, the improvement of security and information exchange protocols, and the modernization of infrastructure and the legislative framework. Cyprus's participation in the Schengen area holds multiple layers of significance. Being at the southeasternmost border of the Union, Cyprus serves as a gateway to Europe. Its forthcoming accession to Schengen would therefore reinforce the EU's southeastern frontier. Furthermore, it reaffirms that the European Union stands strong in every corner of its territory, especially the Eastern Mediterranean, which has always been at the forefront of geopolitical developments. Strengthening the freedom of movement is expected to generate substantial economic benefits for European businesses and people by facilitating the mobility of workers and travellers. At the same time, it will enhance security not only for Cyprus, but for the whole Schengen territory. As we move closer to full participation, we are reminded that Europe's strength lies in its unity, in our shared values and common purpose. Cyprus stands ready to contribute to a Europe that is more open, more secure, and more connected. In respect of the Green Line, which is not a border, it should be stressed that a 21-year-old European regulation is in place. Hence, we are confident that within the existing legal framework, we will continue guaranteeing secure and controlled movement while performing strict controls. All measures deemed necessary to secure free movement, deter illegal migration and any unlawful activity are in place temporarily until the solution of the Cyprus problem and the lifting of the suspension of the implementation of the acquis in the areas where the government of the Republic of Cyprus does not exercise effective control because of the Turkish occupation. Our approach to the Green Line is one that remains fully within the provisions of the pertinent regulation and national legislation, which envisage control over the protection of the principles of the Schengen area. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 2.5 years, the government of the Republic of Cyprus has recorded a substantial reduction in irregular migration flows, attributed to a series of strategic actions at national and international level. As a matter of fact, Cyprus has managed to reduce irregular flows by 87% compared with 2022. In addition, it should be highlighted that secondary movements from Cyprus to the rest of the EU are virtually non-existent. The measures adopted include enhanced border controls and monitoring of the Green Line, diplomatic engagements, technological upgrades in surveillance infrastructure, particularly along the Green Line, expedited examination of asylum applications, and increased returns of third country nationals who have no right to remain in EU territory. In this respect, despite operating within the limits of its current capacity, Cyprus has consistently demonstrated remarkable effectiveness in the field of returns. The success of the National Assistant Voluntary Return Programme, complemented by a well-coordinated national strategy with the support of the Commission and Frontex, placed Cyprus at the forefront of voluntary return operations. In 2024 alone, Cyprus achieved 10,092 returns and has already exceeded 10,000 returns from January 2025 until today. This is a clear indication of both the efficiency and sustainability of its return mechanisms. Importantly, Cyprus is not simply maintaining the status quo, it is pushing for greater efficiency. The government continues to take decisive and forward-looking steps to further strengthen its return system. The establishment of a dedicated ministry for migration, recent recruitment initiatives, including the addition of migration officers, and the planned expansion of the Returns Office will significantly enhance administrative capacity. Furthermore, Cyprus is investing in structural reforms with the support of DG Reform to optimise the organisational readiness and institutional resilience of our government. In this context, The Republic of Cyprus supports the European Commission's proposal for a return regulation. It is the Republic's long-standing view that migration should be dealt with in a comprehensive and cohesive manner across the EU. Thus, Cyprus has been taking part actively in the discussions on the proposed regulation. At the same time, Cyprus holds the view that the forthcoming regulation should provide for flexibility in order for member states to maintain their effective return programmes. To conclude, recent developments in the Middle East underscore Cyprus's enhanced role at the EU's south-easternmost external border. With a view to safeguarding effectively this border and contributing to the success of the Schengen project, Cyprus aspires to become a full member of the Schengen zone. I'd like to express our gratitude to Commissioner Brunner and the Commission for their support. Rest assured that we will continue working hard so as to materialise this significant goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Ioannidis. Last but certainly not least in this first panel is our honourable member and colleague, Mrs. Lena Dupont, who is chair of the Schengen Border Scrutiny Working Group. After her intervention, we will open the question from guests. And for our external guests, we have made available speaking cards. If you want to make a comment or you ask a question, please just fill them in and hand them over to the ushers. So now, Mrs. Dupont, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the esteemed panelists before me for highlighting their views, but also their let's say, well, encouraging statements on Schengen as such. And if you allow, maybe to, I'd like to start with, let's say, 3 remarks on the things that had already been said. And I think it's worth noticing that each and every speaker so far also has hinted at the complexity of the question. So it's not only about Schengen. It's not only about the Schengen Border Code, but it's a different set of instruments. It's a complete toolbox that we have at hand, where, of course, Schengen Border Code is at the very heart, but it concerns the pacts. It concerns legal pathways. It concerns visa policies. It concerns the role of our agencies. It concerns the entry-exit system, digital tools in order to strengthen the security of the European Union. That has repercussions, of course, for the whole functioning of Schengen in the end. A second remark from my side that has been constantly also mentioned, and I'd like to underline that, and I'll just say a few words on that later on, is cooperation, cooperation, cooperation. Whatever we can do in between the 27 member states, at political level, at societal level, in all of the member states' competences, but also at European level, to enhance cooperation is actually of utmost need there. In relation to that, all we are doing here is trying to build up and hold up mutual trust between citizens, between member states, between the member states and the European level in order to make Schengen fully functional. And the fourth remark from my side, and everyone else also have been touching upon that, is the delivery to our people. Schengen is at the very core of European experience. It's the DNA of the European Union. And Mr. Vittorio just elegantly and beautifully said that Schengen was a source for inspiration. I think somehow during the way we lost a bit that appreciation for that inspiration. I would like to echo that and really take it as an encouragement and let us take the energy back from that inspiration to really go forward on Schengen. Because when we look at it, and the Schengen's birthday, actually, the start of the year was a bit of a 3-day-in-one, I would say. We had celebrated the accession of new members to Schengen, so the very idea of Schengen still is attractive and still is concerning people's everyday-to-day life. We had taken quite critically also in plenary, taken stock of where we are with Schengen right now, because there are problems we need to address. So I think sometimes we think we are more advanced on protecting Schengen than we are actually. I think that there is in essence in taking critical stock of that. And the third day we just were celebrating then is a day of rolling up our sleeves, because if we want to have Schengen as we had used it before, we really need to invest politically on all levels. And I might add a few personal notes here. I was born in '86. Back then, Germany was still divided. But when I grew up, when I was able to travel also without my parents, I experienced freedom as probably no generation before me had done so. So we take over now the achievements of Schengen. It's our task and our duty to make sure that the next generation can also benefit from that. Having said that, I think it's already clear and has become clear also by the other interventions, there are a few things we need to do. There are a few things we need to concentrate on if we want to experience Schengen like we had it before. And I think one of the first, probably not necessarily most important one, but where we actually can also draw a lot of energy from, is cross-border cooperation. When you're looking throughout Europe, when you see the beautiful bilateral, trilateral, sometimes even multilateral cooperation between police forces on the ground, it's not only encouraging to see. And looking at Frontex, which is a different cooperation, of course, but I very much remember one of my trips to Finland, where actually a Finnish border guard and a Portuguese border guard were together in a shift, and while the Finnish had exhausted all his words probably for 3 weeks, the Portuguese was still explaining a lot in a very energetic way, telling stories about his work. So this is basically the essence of police cooperation in all various formats that we have on the ground, and they are so dedicatedly and engagedly fighting for a more secure European Union so that we can actually do a lot to support them better on the ground, with technical tools, with language courses, with way of fostering cooperation there. And I really would like to also send a salute to them from that way around. That also means we can strengthen our European agencies. And we need to do that because they fulfill a very important role also in safeguarding Schengen when it comes to the fight against organized crime, when it comes to the protection of the external border, also when it comes to the question of customs within the European Union. So there, I think, is a high need for a closer cooperation than before. This must be based on an efficient and functional information exchange, because having a robust situational picture actually also helps each and everyone who is responsible for the security of the European Union to really take concrete actions once there is a threat. And that also will enlarge our forecast possibilities, thus also strengthening the security of the European Union. Having spoken about the concrete cross-border cooperation, I think there's also a beauty in creating, because you were, Mr. Vitorino was also mentioning Erasmus. Erasmus and Schengen, there's a combination of both, which is Erasmus, for example, for police officers. Encouraging also the exchange, not necessarily only in bordering member states of the European Union, but probably also way above that. And of course, in the changing security situation we are in, we also need to prepare ourselves better for hybrid threats, because the internal security, the external security of the European Union, the lines between them are blurring. So we need to be aware of that, and we also need to equip ourselves with the right tools for that. Not to say the least, of course, enhance the border protection of our external border together as a European responsibility. Having said that, and this is my, let's say, contribution to the discussion here, I would like to also echo a bit what has been said already by numerous speakers before. We take over the courageous spirit that was behind the drafting of the Schengen Agreement at first. We need to now cherish that kind of spirit and being ambitious and courageous to prepare what is not working perfectly and to go forward with those things and strengthen those things that are actually working. Because in the end, it's not only about economic question. It's about people being able and willing and easily connected in reality. And it's about the essence of Europe. Because our vision of Europe is based on meeting each other, on learning from each other, on developing common instruments to common challenges. And this is why I would say it's really high time that we focus on strengthening Schengen wherever we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Lina, for your remarks. I mean, the fact that you chair the Schengen and Border Scrutiny Working Group makes it clear the commitment of the European Parliament and the LIBE Committee in the impulse and of Schengen. and the importance we attach to this extraordinarily important achievement of our union. And now we open the floor for comments or questions from our audience. And in this Q&A session, I will start by giving the floor to first the Libe member, then member of the audience. And I will start by Mr. Furlas. Mr. Furlas, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Allow me to speak in Greek to welcome my minister in our language. Η ζώνη Schengen είναι ένα από τα πιο ισχυρά και αυτά.
The Schengen area is one of the greatest achievements of the European Union. It's not just a system of free movement and exchange, but rather it's a symbol of what a united Europe looks like. Trust between member states and the responsibility for the well-being and security of our citizens. There can't be a complete Europe without a complete Schengen. Cyprus remains outside of the Schengen area, and not because that is what we want, as our minister said, but rather because part of our country is occupied. And that isn't only related to Cyprus, it actually is something which affects all of Europe and our conception of justice, solidarity and unity. Now, we've made important progress politically and technically, and I echo what our minister has said when it comes to Cyprus joining the Schengen area. So I would make an appeal here, colleagues, friends, Commissioner, for you to support my country to put an end to the occupation and so that we can fully join the Schengen area. We no longer want to be hostages just because we have part of our country that is occupied. Schengen is the epitome of the European project, but we won't be able to complete the project if not all member states are participating. Therefore, looking forward to the Cyprian presidency, we need to look beyond borders. We have to look to the world in unity and solidarity. For us, Schengen is an engine that drives European identity and also helps us move to the future. In my small country, Cyprus, it has to occupy the place it deserves.
Thank you very much, Mr. Furlas. I will group all the comments and questions of members and also members of the audience. And now I will give the floor to Mr. López Aguilar.
Thank you so much. We're all pleased to be in this gathering celebrating 40 years of the first Schengen Agreement. So symbolic by then, from the start. Schengen, Luxembourg, Moselle, France, Luxembourg, Germany, all expressing the newborn fundamental rights of Europeans, which is certainly the most appreciated among them all. Article 45 of the Charter consecrates free movement. That was Schengen idea. That was what Schengen was about. But then there came a convention in Dublin 10 years after. And then finally the entering into force of the Treaty of Lisbon with the Charter of Fundamental Rights with the same value as the treaties, making it a real thing, a real fundamental right. And then there came the European Parliament, doing its job as a unique lawmaking power, and then legislating on Schengen. So once upon a time, Schengen was an agreement, and then a convention, but now it's legislated law, and that is the point I think we should also celebrate. That we have done our best in order to reach out for compromises with the Council, in order to put in place Schengen Borders Code. So establishing clear rules which are binding precisely to learn the lessons from experience. We went through the pandemic, which was, yes, what a catastrophe. But of course, it was real damage to this most appreciated right among them all. I mean, I always shed light on the point that curiously enough, when you ask for citizens which is the right they appreciate the most, they say it's free movement. Precisely. Even more than the right to participate in the election of the European Parliament, even more than the right of electoral participation, they really cherish free movement. And yes, the pandemic damaged the mutual trust in which the whole thing is built. The mutual trust has been reasonably enough highlighted by Elena Dupont. But, you know, in policy making, there is also a lesson. Trust is good, control is better. And that's what Schengen Borders Code is about, is giving the Commission tools in order to survey that, yes, there is, first of all, purpose limitation when it comes to putting in place restrictive measures as to free movement when needed. Then there's the principle of necessity and proportionality, which are enshrined also in the Charter of Fundamental Rights to make a lawful impact on fundamental rights of the European citizens. But then there is also time frame. They have to be time framed. They cannot be indefinite. They cannot be unlimited. And the European Commission is precisely to oversee that all principles are respected: necessity, proportionality, purpose limitation, and time frame. And if not, there is the European Court of Justice. We heard very carefully the lengthy message of Kurt Lerners as President of the European Court of Justice. He was making that point. The European Court of Justice is, at the end of the day, the guarantor of the respect of EU law, which is binding for all member states, which sets obligation for the member states in order precisely to better protect the European rights and not only for the European citizens, by the way, but also by anyone under EU law. Might be a foreigner, it might be a migrant, it might be an asylum seeker, but also those rights are to be respected when it comes to the application and implementation of EU law. And the final point, precisely I wanted to make in order to celebrate, is that the work is not completed. It is a fact that Schengen encompasses some countries which are not EU members. Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, we used to quote. But then there is also member states which are not Schengen. Some of the choice, it was the case of the UK for sure, when he was among us, the UK was among us, and it's now the case of Ireland too. But yes, there's Cyprus, willing to enter. We made our best to get Romania and Bulgaria on board, overcoming every difficulty and putting pressure to the Council till the work was done. And we won't stop till Cyprus' willingness to enter and fully enjoy that fundamental rights with the same quality as the rest of the European citizens. Cyprus citizens are not fully met. So thank you for spreading the message, because we get it right. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. López Aguilar, for your thorough comments. I would encourage our external guests to come forward and make their comments or ask their questions. But in the meantime, I'm glad to give the floor to Monsieur Fabrice Leggeri. The floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to thank all of the panellists for their words. We are very happy to have former Commissioner Vitorino with us. Of course, he was at the helm when we went from the intergovernmental Schengen setup towards it being part and parcel of EU law. My question is more political in nature. And of course, we welcome what Commissioner Brunner was saying about the entry-exit system being put into place. At last, 3 years late, that is a way of strengthening the external borders. But I think it's very important that we come back to the spirit of the founding members. And we should not forget that the Schengen space was set up in an intergovernmental way because there was trust between the states. And we have seen, as time has progressed, what we have seen is there's been a loss of trust on the part of national governments, but also on the part of people. And what we can see today, whether you like it or not, is you have internal borders where there are checks. People say there are other measures that are perhaps more efficient, but in some cases it really is politically necessary to reassure people. So my question is the following. Should we not think about the political governance of Schengen? We often talk about measures, we often talk about technical measures, but in doing so, what we do is essentially our citizens are lost. They do not know who is controlling what, who is evaluating the performance of member states in the way they control the external border. Now, I remember in the early days of Schengen, you had NGOs who were accusing the EU or Schengen states of creating Fortress Europe. And, this worries me because this will to control the external borders seems to have been lost. So maybe there's some political thinking that could be done here. And I would very much like to hear from Commissioner Vitorino, but also all of the panelists, what they think about these issues. Thank you.
Monsieur Jarry. And now I give back the floor to members of the panel to react to the previous intervention. Antonio, would you like to step in?
Well, je commence par la question parce que...
Well, maybe I can start with that question there, because I think it is a real question. I think what we need to do is we need to recognise that over the last 40 years, not all states have taken the same care. And I think that, to a certain extent, the fact that not all of the sections of our external border have been subject to an equivalent level of control has created political issues. And these are political issues that we need to resolve. Because, of course, it's to the benefit of all that borders are controlled to the same level. And I think if you look at the standards that we have now, they're a lot clearer, and there are other institutions, such as Frontex, which have been cooperating with member states to improve external border checks. The monitoring system, essentially it's a peer-to-peer system. So, how can I put this diplomatically? Okay, I'm no longer a commissioner, but I need to be diplomatic nonetheless. So there are sort of agreements on the evaluation of the system. Let's put it like that. So, can the Commission fully play its role? Looking at standardising the evaluation criteria. But of course we need to respect the powers of each individual member state and the way that each individual member state manages its external border. So having said that, this is my opinion. I may well be wrong, but this is my opinion. Internal border checks don't play a decisive role in terms of irregular or illegal migration, call it what you will. That's my view of things on the basis of my experience. I understand that for internal political reasons, sometime re-establishing internal border checks can be useful to quell the concerns of public opinion. But let's be objective here. I understand that, but don't expect better results fighting illegal migration by reintroducing internal border checks. It's not by putting in all these measures in all together that we're going to say that internal border checks that it's not doing its role. No, we should not exaggerate what we should expect from the re-establishment of internal border checks when you're talking about fighting irregular migration. There are other tools at our disposal. and I gave you 3 examples, 3 tangible examples. Ask yourself this. How many cases of irregular labour has come up before the courts in the different member states? How many cases of human trafficking have made it to court? And if you look at the UN figures on organised crime, they show that there has been a reduction in the prosecution of human trafficking rings, and that is a concern. And that means we need cooperation between all the member states, but also with third countries. Because without cooperation with third countries, be they countries of origin, be they transit countries, any link in these human trafficking chains, we will not be able to reduce irregular immigration. That is my response to that question, without getting too much into the political nitty-gritty. You know, I've retired after all.
Merci, Antonio. Minister Ioannidis.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Furlas and Mr. Lopez Aguilar for their supportive comments. Just a brief comment on who monitors the performance of checks at borders. Well, that's a very crucial question, and as you all know, Europe has been under pressure over the last at least 10 years owing to the refugee crisis. So the first priority is to implement, for the first time, a comprehensive and coherent legal framework governing migration. So it's a first-class opportunity for us to implement the Pact on Migration and Asylum in order to improve the situation on the ground and address this thorny issue in a concerted way. And I think that if we manage to address this matter in an effective way, then we'll be able to delve into other substantial issues pertaining to migration, because definitely it is the wish of all member states and the Commission, of course, to improve the situation in terms of external border controls, returns, how we deal with solidarity, how we form strategic partnerships with third countries. All these issues and all the measures provided for in the Pact will enable us to improve the situation on the ground. And of course, at the same time, we will be able to improve our performance in respect of border controls and checks. And it will enhance the Schengen system as well at the same time. So we believe that by properly implementing the Pact, the Schengen area, the Schengen zone, will also benefit from this. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Ioannidis. Mrs. Dupont.
Maybe just one small comment to the questions and points raised. I think in the time we're in, there is one simple, I would say as simple as it can be, one simple aspect. Whatever happens around the European Union has effect on the external border of the European Union. Having an effect on the external border of the European Union means there might be, and far too often there is, an effect on the Schengen zone. Having an effect on the Schengen zone means we far too soon end up in internal policies of the European Union. This is why inner security, the internal security, and the Commissioner had said that, is so crucial and so important, not only for the functioning of Schengen, but for the overall security situation of the European Union. And there are challenges each and every member state will not be able to face on their own. We are in it together. We had been for quite a while. We take up the spirit from Schengen, where with a higher vision, actually, member states were courageous to create the Schengen zone. We also need to have the same dedication when we concentrate on the external border of the European Union. So there, I would actually say there is a bit of room for improvement between member states, but also in the way we cooperate at European level. Because indeed, whether you look at migration, whether you look at organized crime, whether you look at hybrid threats, there are threats we can, each and every one, deal better with if we do it together. There is a European added value to that. And there are also challenges where no member states alone will be able to solve them. So this would be my answer to that.
Thank you, Mr. Dupont. Now we move to the next round of the speakers, and I will give the floor first to Mr. Gyadi from ECR. The floor is yours.
Please allow me, I will speak in Greek. Να καλωσορίσουμε τους αξιότιμους.
Yes. I would like to warmly welcome our honored guests, especially thanking Mr. Aguilar for the support he has provided for Cyprus, all of the cooperation he's contributed to. It's very important for tourism, and it's very important for security. That's what we're responsible for. And of course, it's important, it's very difficult for us to carry out these controls. And in addition, you have to take into account the fact that you're talking about cooperation among sovereign states within Schengen, and that the Schengen area in general has to be very tightly controlled, especially concerning migration policy. So I think what we've heard about this internal documentation, that Cyprus could not actually address their internal they can't address their internal border. Well, there is no internal border. It's just the green line. And so I think the occupied, you have to recall that the occupied territories also belong to Schengen. And so I think the problem is with Turkey, who is continuing to occupy the area. And for that reason, you have to include Cyprus in the Schengen area. And it's not just a benefit for Cyprus, it benefits all of the EU.
Mr. Gyadi, and now the floor goes to Mrs. Raquel García Hermida van der Valle.
Gracias, Presidente. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of the speakers here today for joining us, and also to our external guests. I would like to come back on the subject of internal border controls. I'm from the Netherlands, and we have border controls already since the beginning of end of last year, and they're being continued. We see serious disruptions of our border traffic with Germany because of the German border controls. And the reflection that I would like to make is when I speak to, like yesterday I did with one of the mayors of one of our municipalities at the border on the Dutch side of things, and he speaks with police agents, and when I speak with police agents or the border police in the Netherlands, Marochisé, you know, what I hear is, look, we do this because we have to, but actually we see what the numbers are and we see what this delivers, and it delivers nothing, and it costs a lot of time, and it costs a lot of effort, and it costs a lot of money, and it costs a lot of disruption for our citizens. And we're getting nowhere with curtailing illegal movement of migrants between these countries with this method. So I think when we talk about collaborating with our police forces in an efficient and rational and effective way, that we have to go back to the principles of Schengen, that any disruptions, any restrictions of the basic freedom of movement have to be absolutely necessary, urgent and proportional. And I'm sorry that the Commissioner is not here at the time, but I'm sure the Commission is listening. Please be a bit more forceful in the way that you are dealing with the requests for extension from member states, because this is really getting us nowhere and is really hurting the trust of our citizens, especially in the border regions in the European Union. That would be my call. Thank you.
Thank you. And now it will be for Ms. Strick to take the floor.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chair, both chairs actually, and honourable guests here in this ceremony. I'm always in for a party, but of course there is a reason to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Schengen, because it was a landmark decision to abolish the internal border controls, which created a free European zone for citizens to travel. So the importance of Schengen to our ever closer union cannot be underestimated. But of course, we should also be fair to each other and reflect on how the reality of Schengen has developed until today. And I think that gives us a lot of reasons less for a party, because it feels a bit strange to celebrate while the house is on fire. I really think that we are faced now with an existential threat for the Schengen area. Because if you look at the last 10 years, for instance, many member states have reintroduced internal border control and renewed it time after time, every time on a different ground. There was one judgment from the Court of Justice, but many times it didn't reach the court, but the practices continued. And now, at the moment, not less than 15 member states are undermining the Schengen system with endless so-called temporary border checks. And if I look at the fundamental rights, which is of course also an integral and fundamental part of the whole Schengen system, we see that they are also systematically violated at our external borders, for instance through pushbacks, which are happening before our eyes. This prevents, of course, people to have access to the core of the Refugee Convention, namely access to an asylum procedure. And I must really say, member states are even not hiding these practices anymore because they enjoy impunity. The Commission is funding the border controls, Frontex is supporting the member states, but the violations simply continue. I think that here, and this is also actually in support of what my colleague said before, the Commission should really step up its role as a guardian of the treaties to make sure that our common values are also applicable at our external borders. What you see now is that this practice of lawlessness actually has now also reached our internal borders as well. So I would really want to see also a sense of urgency in this meeting to see and to work on how can we restore the open space that we have created to make sure we have free travel, but at the same time respect for fundamental rights, both within the zone, but also at our common external borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Strick. And now, Ms. Sippel, do you want to take the floor? Okay. Isabel Bisla-Lima.
Thank you so much. It will not be very different from what my colleague said. After 40 years, I think we really have all the reason to celebrate. It's a very nice age, let it say like that. Je vais continuer en français, excusez-moi.
I'll continue in French. I'd like to talk about how we arrived at Schengen, because there are a number of steps before it was put in place. And this was something magnificent. And I also want to talk about the road travelled afterwards, because we have continued to make progress and enlarge Schengen. Now, I remember all too well the borders between Germany, France, Luxembourg, a small country with 3 borders, and I remember this very well. Now, I must say that Schengen opened up a space of freedom to travel, which separated East and West from authoritarian governments, dictatorships. So this space of freedom means a lot more than just being able to travel. Now, it's already been said, but I would like to really insist on this freedom of movement inside the Schengen area. It's probably the most tangible aspect for our citizens. It's something which citizens care deeply about, and it's become such a natural thing that they only notice when it's gone. It's such a significant part of our life that we only notice it when it's no longer there. Now, I just want to quickly say this, but there is no real reason for the borders to be subject to checks between countries. It could have been regions or perhaps areas where the virus was surging, but there's no real reason for the country borders to be subject to checks. Now, this situation that we're all used to, and it really has changed the daily reality of people. I've already mentioned Luxembourg, and I will do so again. Now you all know how big Luxembourg is. And when there are borders, it almost feels like a prison. I mean, it's a very pretty prison, but it's a prison nonetheless. And this feeling is terrible. Now we are very attached to the neighbouring countries, Germany, France, Belgium. Many people cross the border on a daily basis to work. But there are lots of border regions throughout Europe. We cannot call that into question. Now, I took the floor to really speak up for this. My question is, are we doing something about this? What is our attitude when it comes to Schengen? Are we ensuring that there are means? Are we dealing with those countries that don't understand what they have signed up for? Now, we heard very clearly from the judge who spoke at the beginning. Now, we're in a space where the rule of law applies, and we have, of course, obligations which we must fulfill. Thank you.
Madame Bizarrima. And now we'll give the floor to Mr. Mavrides and then back to members of the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be brief myself too. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the organizers of this event for celebrating 40 years of Schengen area and echoing on what the Commissioner has already said in his initial statement regarding the protection or the external border protection and having no internal borders. It's nice to see that most of us, we concentrate on that specific issue. And myself, I have been a witness during the last few years, traveling, that many member states, in fact, under some pretext, they have internal controls. The understanding, though, from most of us as MEPs is that Schengen area was made not only for good times, but also for not so good times as well. So, first question, how do we ensure that we will not face internal controls within an area which is supposed to have no internal controls? And my second point is towards Mr. Nicolas Ioannidis, that I do warmly welcome in the European Parliament. And I feel that Cyprus is a long due application to join the Schengen area. And here is a specific question. What are some of the challenges faced by an isolated member state in the northeastern border of EU, considering, of course, or besides, needless to say, the continuing occupation of the northern part of the Republic of Cyprus by Turkey?
Thank you, Mr. Mavridis. And now I give back the floor to members of the panel. First to answer the question that's been addressed to them, and then for their closing remarks, starting by Mr. Vitorino. Antonio, the floor is yours.
Maybe there are questions.
Well, there are some few questions, but if you want to start with, okay. Mr. Ioannidis, then the floor is yours. You start then, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Mavridis, for the question. Indeed, an island state, owing to its nature, deals with various problems when it comes to connectivity. We all face this when we travel. And of course, another matter of concern is security. That's why I highlighted the importance of Cyprus's accession to the Schengen zone in order to uphold the security both of Cyprus and the European Union. Another important point is mobility. I mean, we have to facilitate the carrying out of the fundamental freedoms of the EU. So we believe that by becoming full members of the Schengen zone, we'll be able to address effectively these issues: connectivity, security, mobility, and of course, it's a matter of principle. We're the only member state that is not a full member of the Schengen zone. So we believe that we can address these difficulties, and at the same time, I'd like to highlight the fact that the Green Line, which divides our island, unfortunately, is not a border. I'd like to reiterate this because it's quite important to us. And I'd like to repeat that any controls or checks across the Green Line are based on a more specific legal regime. The Green Line regulation, which is lex specialis, we do not implement border legislation when it comes to controls at the Green Line. We've got a more specific legal regime, and we hope that soon we won't have to apply this regulation because the illegal occupation will end and we will be able to move freely across our island. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ioannidis. Antonio.
Well, I don't consider that I have been directly put a question. I just wanted to make two very brief remarks. The first is to say that if I had a remark about the future, when we were going through the pandemic, I was the Director General of the International Organization for Migration, a UN agency that deals with migration. I was based in Geneva, and the border controls prevented me to go shopping in France, which was my weekly habit, so I have a personal case here. But above all, what was disturbing was the fact that I understand reintroducing border controls when it comes to a pandemic, which is quite an outstanding situation. What I can claim is that it would have been better if there had been an internal EU coordination about that. Because some have closed one day, others have closed 15 days later, others have reopened. So the patchwork made it extremely difficult to understand what was going on in Europe. And so one lesson for the future, I hope, I cross my fingers, we will have no new pandemics, but in these kind of emergencies, it is even more important to have a coordination among member states about how they manage the closure of the borders. It was not just the internal border control, it was the closure of the external border. We were talking there about closures of the external border, and it was a very difficult moment to understand. And it was possible to go to some countries, but not to others. But then you had free movement inside. So it's very complex, and there is something there to be done. My second remark is to say that when I was a commissioner, I was always under strong pressure from the Libe Committee about these issues. And I'm glad to see that you treat my successors as you have treated myself when I was a commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio. Well, after all, you're the only commissioner around, so you have to take the comments and questions of the members. Lena Dupont.
Just shortly, Chair. Allow me to also combine it with the concluding remarks with a specific view on the role of this House here and also on the working group. I think this House specifically has always been very vocal about the sensitiveness of Schengen and the importance of Schengen, and I'm really sure that we will go on with highlighting that in various formats, be it in plenary debates or resolutions, or even in concrete legislative work. And having said that, I think what we can do as European Parliament is be as vocal as we had been before, putting pressure on the Commission at various levels, but at the same time also make sure that we here in the House deliver on the proposals that are at hand, which is of course the implementation of the pact. Well, we're in the hands of the member states there, but of course we follow that also under the guide of Birgit Sippel and the working group focusing on the implementation. Second thing, of course, is the work of the working group on Schengen and border. Third thing is the proposals that are sometimes already on the table and will be on the table from the Commission when it comes to the strengthening of the security union. And I think there we, as Parliament, really also need to take our role seriously in delivering security for our citizens in the end, because, like I said at the beginning, the blurring lines between internal and external security have an effect on the day-to-day life of our citizens and are the expectations of our citizens. So we need to focus, of course, on restoring Schengen as we had it before, but at the same time really also make sure that we take stock of this changing security situation and deliver on that as well, so that less member states feel the need to recur to temporary internal border controls.
Thank you. Well, I have to thank you, all the members of the panel, for their outstanding contributions to this discussion. We started with the President of the Court of Justice, Mr. Lenaerts, who stressed the role of the Court as the guardian of rule of law in the European Union, and setting the main issues of the legal framework involving Schengen. Then we had Antonio Vitorino recalling the long and difficult path from the Schengen Agreement up to it was the Schengen acquis being ventilated, you say? Being ventilated into the primary law of the Union, and then we have Minister Ioannidis. With the view of the Cyprus presidency of the Union, but also making his contribution on their national experience and that. And then we have Elena Dupont stressing the role of the Parliament. Quite, complementary interventions that, in my opinion, has the tone for the rest of the event. So we do thank you. Let's celebrate this achievement. Don't take it for granted, but let's continue to work in order to strengthen our cooperation, our trust in the benefit of the European citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.